Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at a story where traditional detective work hit an absolute brick wall, and it took a massive leap in modern science to finally bring a killer to justice. We'll be looking exactly at how DNA phenotyping solved a chilling Texas cold case. Honestly, if you've ever wondered how much your DNA really says about you, well, you're about to find out.
We're going to dive into the incredibly tragic murder of Shantae Blankenship. In forensic science, DNA is pretty much treated as the holy grail. But here's the catch. A DNA profile is essentially useless if you don't have anyone to match it to. So, what exactly happens when a killer's genetic footprint is just completely missing from every national database?
Section 1, a brutal small-town murder. Let's set the scene in May, Texas. It's a tight-knit, deeply religious community where everyone basically knows everyone. So let's look at how this played out. On Friday the 13th, 25-year-old Shantae, who actually had the mental capacity of a 9-year-old, vanished while out on her usual evening walk. The town organized search parties right away, but by Sunday, May 15th, a couple searching an isolated, abandoned property made a truly gruesome discovery. They found Shantae's severely beaten body in a storm cellar. The next morning, the autopsy confirmed her cause of death, blunt force trauma. Now, what's really wild about this crime scene is the contrast. Amidst all this horrific brutality, including a bloody lawnmower blade and these unexplained, ritualistic markings on Shantae's chest, the killer made one critical mistake. He left behind a pristine, microscopic clue. Male DNA. It gave detectives their very first concrete piece of evidence. Section 2. The DNA dead end. With this DNA in hand, detectives did the logical thing and started interviewing local men. From those interviews, 3 main suspects popped up. First, her boyfriend, John. His behavior was oddly unconcerned, he had prior burglary charges, and get this, detectives caught him deleting texts from his phone. Then you had Bobby Sosa. He drove a suspect Bronco, had a prior assault charge, and lived nearby in a foul-smelling RV. And finally, Colin Smith. He secretly dated Shantae, and crucially, he worked in lawn care, so he had easy access to lawnmower blade. And this right here perfectly illustrates the limits of traditional interrogation. They brought Colin in for a polygraph. When asked directly about the murder, his heart rate, his breathing, his perspiration, they all spiked. He failed it spectacularly. But physical science is completely objective. When the lab results came back, Colin's DNA was a negative match. Actually, all 3 of those highly suspicious men were cleared by the DNA results. And it gets worse. When they ran the crime scene sample through the national database, 0 matches. Nothing. This meant the killer was just a ghost in the system, leaving detectives terrified that the murderer might have been some drifter who had already moved on. Section 3. Enter DNA phenotyping. Fast forward to October 2017. More than a year into this frustrating cold case, an investigator discovered a technological game changer. Enter technology called Parabon Snapshot. Think of this as a genetic witness. Instead of just looking for a simple database match, DNA phenotyping actually reads the genetic code to predict a person's physical appearance. We're talking eye color, hair color, skin tone, facial structure. It literally draws a suspect's face from a single invisible swab left at a crime scene. And the price tag for this literal game changer? Just $4,000. The department secured that funding in a matter of hours. They shipped the DNA straight off to Dr. Ellen Graytech and her team at Parabon Nanolabs to finally get a profile of this elusive killer. Section 4. The face in the snapshot. Weeks later, that completed report finally landed on lead detective Scott Bird's desk. After chasing ghosts for a year and a half, they had a face. And it wasn't some random stranger passing through town. It was a 21-year-old local guy named Ryan Riggs. The science proved the killer was in their own community all along. And here is where it gets incredibly personal. Detective Bird looked at this composite and recognized Ryan instantly. Why? Because years before becoming a cop, Scott Bird had actually been a school teacher, and he taught Ryan in the 5th grade. He had known this suspect since childhood. Section 5. Hiding in plain sight. Now, armed with a name and a face, the truly horrifying reality of what Ryan Riggs had been up to came into crystal clear focus. Ryan had been right under their noses the whole time. It's chilling. He literally rode in the search parties calling out her name. He went to the wake and physically hugged Shantae's grieving parents.
He even sat in the church alongside 100 other mourners for the funeral, completely undetected.
So when police finally moved in and went to his house on November 9th, his parents told them he was gone. Within hours of that generated image hitting the news, Ryan realized the science had caught up to him. He slipped away, and a tense manhunt kicked off. But that manhunt didn't actually last very long. The very next evening, Pastor Ron Kinnear was standing in his church parking lot before service. Out of nowhere, Ryan walks up alongside his mother, looks right at the pastor, and shockingly just says, "I murdered her." He surrendered himself right then and there. In the interrogation room, Ryan spilled everything. He perfectly described undisclosed crime scene details, admitting to strangling her and using the mower blade. And when they asked him why, he gave this absolutely chilling explanation. "I've always had this different part of me that just wants nothing but destruction and evil. They wanted to kill somebody." Faced with his own confession, and of course that undeniable DNA evidence, Ryan Riggs pled guilty to capital murder. In 2019, he was handed a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He's never going to harm anyone in that community again. The whole ordeal left some pretty deep scars on May, Texas. That abandoned property became known locally as the Haunted House, and it was a constant, painful reminder for Shantae's family. To help the town finally heal, both the house and the storm cellar were completely demolished in 2025. This case brilliantly shows how rapid advancements in forensic science are just completely shrinking the shadows where criminals hide. Ryan Riggs thought he had pulled it off, but his own biology betrayed him. It leaves us with a pretty intense question to think about. As DNA phenotyping continues to evolve, if your DNA can literally paint your portrait from a microscopic drop, is there anywhere left to hide?